Hey, what's up, everybody? So today I'm going to be interviewing my uncle Art, who is a retired police officer, about various social issues that are facing our country today. And so to start it off, can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you chose to be a police officer?
That's a that's the pat answer, and I think I just wrote this down somewhere recently.
Mm-hmm.
The pat answer is almost everybody that I know that went into law enforcement answers this question. They always say, because I want to help people. I basically wanted to become a police officer because I was just fascinated with the investigative portion of solving crimes. And that's pretty much it. Solving crimes was always a fascination of mine.
Okay. And what police department were you with?
Oh, the Akron Police Department.
And
for 33 years.
33 years. Can you tell me about like what kind of divisions you worked in and?
Well, most guys generally start out right out of the police academy. Everyone's assigned to the various shifts on the department. And, I think my initial shift back then for some reason they called them tricks. There were 7 tricks, basically shifts. There was the morning shift. It started like 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, and all the shifts overlap. And then there's the 3 o'clock till 7 o'clock shift. And I'm sorry, I take that back. There was the 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, and then there was the noon to 8 shift. Then there was the 3 to 11 shift, and then there was the 7:30 to 3:30 shift, and then the midnight shift. But at the time, Trick 5 was a rotating shift. Mm-hmm. They would go from working days to nights. Every 28 days they would rotate, and man, that was brutal on the body. That was brutal. Then I went from patrol. When I started, I worked 7:30 at night to 3:30 in the morning, and to me, for a rookie, that's the shift that people got a lot of the most action. That's where a lot of the young people wanted to go because they wanted to.
The late night shift?
Midnight, I never worked midnights. Midnights was 11 at night to 7 in the morning. Because, after 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, say, then you still got half your shift left, and most people are in bed by 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So midnight shift guys, they had that lull probably between 4 and 7 o'clock. It was probably pretty quiet, but when you work 7:30 to 3:30, you got the early fight calls, you got the fights after dinner, you got the fights after the bars close, and the heavy traffic time, so you had accidents. So to me, the 7:30 at night to 3:30 in the morning shift was probably the busiest.
Okay. And well, that sort of answered the next question. What's a typical day like for an Akron police officer?
Well, a lot of that depends on what shift you work. Usually when you come into the roll call room, and then the sergeant comes in, reads off the roll call, and has the assignments who everyone's going to work with. Some shifts you had permanent partners, 2-man cars. Other districts had, say, a 1-person car. And then you had guys that didn't have assigned partners, and they were called the fill guys. So like, for instance, if you and I were partners and you took a day off and we worked a 2-man car, then one of the fill guys would take your spot. And so I was always fortunate, though. I liked having a district. I liked knowing where I was going to be every day. A fill guy could work one district, he could work 3 or 4 different districts just in his one work week.
And then like starting to talk about some of the issues. What are some of the problems within police departments that the public doesn't see? Pettiness
Pettiness within the department itself. Most of the guys, a lot of the guys feel, I always felt more comfortable being out in the street because I knew where the boundaries were between me and the people you were serving, the people that you were sworn to protect and serve, and the criminal element that you had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. You knew what the parameters were with dealing with the public. One of the biggest problems with a lot of guys is what the pressure from within the department, from the higher ranking officers, and how petty some of these people that are promoted to captain, lieutenant, and different positions, how petty some of the people you work for were, and it causes a lot of stress on officers. And I always find that so amazing because one of the things that they always told you in the police academy was the stress level of the job. There was a high percentage of marital problems because of police work. There was a high percentage of alcoholism within the ranks because of the police work. There were all these different factors that added to your pressure, personal pressure, aside from what you had to do, dealing with the public. Mm-hmm. So I always thought it was just very odd that the administration itself would lend itself to these types of people who would cause a lot of tension within the ranks. Because if you're telling me in the academy that this is a high pressure job, I would think it would be to our benefit if our high ranking officers would understand that and not allow this type of pettiness to go on within the police department. Guys, you didn't have a place to take your grievance with the high law that was being unreasonable or petty, because it was just a part of, hey, you just had to deal with it. You didn't have a real outlet for someone to step in to manage I guess a human resources department of some sort would have been beneficial, but that to me was one of the biggest problems within the police department, one of the biggest problems for me. But unfortunately, or fortunately, it never affected me. Mm. I guess I pretty much had a career that I always pretty much got what I wanted. Like I said, when I started out, I worked 7:30 at night, 3:30 in the morning, and after about, I'd say about 5 years, I was assigned to Vice Squad, so I worked undercover, and I did that for 5 years, and so you got to, like I said, got to dress down, you got your own DB car, and then I left there. And I went back to uniform to noon to 8 shift. And then I worked several years noon to 8 in patrol again. Then there was a Lieutenant Harold Craig started a specialized unit called the Street Narcotics Uniform Division. Basically, it was designed to deal with the sale of narcotics openly on the street corners, because these were incidences that were taking up too much time for patrol, because you were always getting calls for service about check the people selling dope on the corner, and they were sending the cars. And
it was like early 90s.
This was in the 80s. This would have been in the 80s, and so this was taken away from the district cars calls for service. And it was something that narcotics, which is basically undercover also, they didn't want to front their people out every day dealing with people selling drugs openly on the street. So the Street Narcotics Uniform Division was formulated to deal with just that problem, basically. And that was a pretty, I think it was a great idea, because we were almost a self-contained, self-serve unit we were sent to training class to learn how to do our own search warrants, so we didn't have to call a prosecutor at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So it's like The Wire when they have like their own special unit or something like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So we pretty much were a self-contained unit. And the way that Lieutenant Craig staffed the unit, he took people with different forms of expertise, because like I said, I had spent 5 years in Vice Squad, and so I had a background of investigative skills and surveillance. So this was all a part of our tactics that we deployed in using in dealing with street narcotics. And we had people come in from, for instance, detectives from burglary that he brought in. We were some of the older guys. And then he brought in some of the younger guys that were street cops. These were the guys that still wanted to get out of the car and chase people down the street and jump over fences and stuff.
So you didn't want to do that no more?
No, I didn't really want to do that anymore. But like I said, he had a balance of the burglary guys were good at doing search warrants, because that basically, when you investigate burglaries, that's how you obtained a lot of your evidence, was through search warrants. So we got that background. You had my background with investigative skills plus surveillance, and then you had, quote unquote, the foot soldiers, the younger guys that wanted to get out there and mix it up a little bit. So it was a good balance of guys.
And moving on to the next question, what are your thoughts on drug legalization? What drugs should be legalized and why?
Drug legalization in this country is long overdue. I wouldn't say across the board, because there are a lot of drugs that are dangerous, like heroin, for instance. I have always been for the legalization of marijuana, mostly because...
Really?
Yes, but mostly because it's not much different from alcohol. And socially, it's always pretty much been accepted, and there is justification for medical marijuana, and I think the resources that the government and the police department put into trying to eradicate it is pointless, and it's just a waste of money. And it's money that we could use for drug rehabilitation for more serious drugs. And it's been proven, just like in Colorado, how beneficial it is to our economics. And to me, it still takes some of the money out of the hands of the drug lords and the drug cartels.
Well, the only reason that I would be in favor of legalizing more hardcore drugs is due to the fact that the amount of money, the profit motive from, shipping from, let's say, Peru to once it gets north of the Rio Grande, like a brick of cocaine down there costs like $100, but once it gets north of here, it skyrockets to $50,000, $100,000. So I think that if you legalize more of the hardcore drugs and regulated it, you could cut down on the overdoses. You can definitely take a chunk out of the money out of the cartel's pockets. And because people are going to do these drugs regardless, and I think that it's easy. I think it's easier to get like a cokehead or a heroin addict off the drugs if you slowly wean them off of it instead of just having them go cold turkey. That's just my take on it.
Well, I guess I'm just a little old school in that sense, that I have a fear of the harder drugs, because I've seen the devastation that it causes. Even something like cocaine. I still remember the Cleveland Browns had a fantastic young free safety.
The Cleveland Browns were a good team at one point?
At one point, the Cleveland Browns were an excellent football team. Before they moved to Baltimore, they were an excellent football team, a perennial playoff team.
The playoffs?
Oh, yeah. Playoffs, yeah. The Browns were always in the playoffs. Every day. But I think his name was Don Rogers. I'm pretty sure his name was Don Rogers. He was having a bachelor party. He was going to be married the next day, and he was having a bachelor party, and he used cocaine, and he died of a cocaine overdose. Same thing happened to a young prospect by the name of Lynn Bias, who was a first-round draft pick from the Boston Celtics. Exact same thing. And these were perfectly healthy, young, strong men, and they had done cocaine before. Those types of incidences with that drug, that just frightened me, because I always had heard of it without having used cocaine, but I had heard that it was just a stimulant. And I just had the fear of putting stuff up my nose. That just seems so unnatural, to sniff stuff up your nose. I mean, where else in life do people do that? They go around and sniff stuff up their nose. But seeing these people just die like that, it's like, man, I don't know if I want to do that drug. It's like, you're snorting coke one minute, next thing you know, you're convulsing and the dude's gone. Weed, you smoke it, and when you reach a certain level, you put it down. People didn't die of weed overdoses. And things that you can die from taking too much, like pills, like cocaine, things like that. To me, it's like you're playing Russian roulette.
Yeah.
That's why I have a hard time with the legalization of things like heroin, cocaine. These have been proven that they can kill you.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. People have died from it. I've never heard of someone ODing on marijuana before.
Actually, I heard that you could die from marijuana due to the lack of oxygen. If and this is like you have to smoke like 1,000 something blunts, like an insane amount. Because they tried to do research with mice, and it was just an insane amount of marijuana. But they didn't die from the marijuana. They died due to the lack of oxygen and
But the thing is too, anything in life that we consume almost. And I'm sure you've heard of alcohol poisoning.
Oh yeah.
It's legal, but that's the whole point I'm making, is the fact that anything in large amounts can kill you. Salt that you can buy, that you use to season your food. You eat too much of it, it'll kill you.
Yeah. I saw someone when I lived in the dorms at the University of Akron freshman year. I saw a dude, they had to call the cops because he stayed in the dorm room across from me. And I peeked my head out the door, and he was literally just puke was everywhere. He he couldn't even walk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think that on college campuses alcoholism is very, very prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
I drink one shot. I'm I have my little buzz and that's it. But some people it's just
It's, well, you're like me. It's like I can, if I'm out or partying or something, I'll probably never consume more than 4 alcoholic beverages in an evening or an outing. If I'm driving, it's going to be less. But if I'm attending a party, I could be at a party for 6 hours. In that 6-hour time, I still wouldn't consume more than 4 drinks. Because I don't like not being in control of myself.
That's exactly how I feel.
I just don't like it, and it's just, I don't know. I guess a lot of it's embarrassing, to be someplace and you are
puking on yourself,
not in control of your bodily functions. That's just, to me, it's a sign of immaturity for one, or you have a serious alcohol problem. But
and then we'll move on to the next question. Do you think tough on crime laws and the ideology of tough on crime, do you think it works?
Well, to be tough on crime,
like mandatory minimums are in the decades or something like that.
I think mandatory minimums are ridiculous, because all crimes. That's why you have the different statutes: misdemeanor, first, second, third, fourth degree misdemeanor, the same with felonies, because they're all different. And so the mandatory minimums or mandatory sentences based on that are, to me, are just ridiculous, because there's so much variation in as to why people commit crimes, how often they may commit a crime. Each case should be tried on its own merits. So mandatory minimums and well, as you can see now, they've started to get rid of it because it's
Doesn't work.
no, it doesn't work, and it's just it's almost like punitive. You're punishing people because of you're placing a certain value on their behavior that's inconsistent with our judicial process. And I've never agreed with it, and I'm glad that some of these mandatory minimums are being stricken from the law books. Because, for instance, a guy selling a nickel bag of weed back in the 70s could go to prison for 10 years. That's absurd. That's just absurd. For what the crime is, it's absurd. And then you can have something as devastating to our economy, like during the real estate bubble. All the people that took advantage of American citizens ruined people's lives, destroyed people's finances, and these people, virtually nothing happened. Just like Exxon. Wait a minute. Which was the oil company that had the major spill?
BP.
BP. Nobody. These people should have gone to jail. They should have gone to jail. They knew, they were warned, they were told that there were problems with what they were trying to do, but they insisted on getting that oil regardless. Do what I say.
I mean, those are different kinds of people, you know.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. They're crimes. People's lives were destroyed. People died, and nobody went to jail for it.
I mean, but they're not selling drugs.
They're killing people. That's what people talk about drugs. Drugs are killing people. Crime is crime. So it's not being, like you said, because these are basically white-collar crimes. These are business people. Their intent is not to kill people. The guy's selling dope. His intent is not to kill people. He's not trying to kill his customers. People die, but they get punished for it. But people who commit those types of crimes, they don't do anything to them.
It's like, you know, you sell $100 worth of crack and you might go to jail for like, you know, 5 to 7, but you know, you steal thousands of people's, you know, retirement.
Yeah, their pension is gone now. Oh well.
But then they get a bonus.
Sure. So the double standard is, well, like I said, that's why we have Donald Trump for president, because people are tired of it. People are tired of being treated this way, and to me, the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. In this sense, they've done this to our economy. Years ago, one of my best friends, when we graduated from high school, got a job working at Goodyear as an apprentice. He walked out of high school one day, the next day he's working at Goodyear, making a good living, was able to buy a house, buy a car, feed his family. This is what the American dream used to be about, manufacturing and jobs. But because people of great wealth want to maximize their profits, they look for alternative ways to do the same thing without using workers. And that's why we have what we have today. And these politicians, they are financed by those 1%. That 1% group are the people who keep financing these campaigns to keep these people elected, to make these decisions that work against the people. But then they end up electing a guy president who's lived his whole life getting or amassing as much wealth as he can for himself, stepping on the necks of little people, and for some strange reason they believe he's going to be their savior.
Well, I was going to get to politics later, in the later part of the interview, but I guess we can talk about it now. So I mean, so like our political system, you're not really feeling the dawn?
No. As a matter of fact, I'm hurt.
You don't want to make America great.
I am hurt that this country, when Barack Obama was elected, I thought that was like a dawn of a new era, that this country is finally getting beyond the appearance of people and what they look like, and to elect a president who at the time to me seemed to clearly be the best candidate. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's no knock against John McCain. John McCain's a fine man. He's a war hero. He's a fine man. But it was clear to me that Barack Obama was clearly the better choice. And even today, I think when all is said and done in history, he'll go down as probably one of the most brilliant presidents this country has ever had. It's just a shame that the Republican Party, and I'm a Republican, the Republican Party has done so much to try to ruin this man's legacy. And it's so unfair. Because when he first ran for office and people were talking about, well, he's a Muslim. I thought to myself, I don't know that he is, or if he isn't a Muslim, maybe he has a name that sounds like he could be a Muslim. But so what? John Kennedy was a Catholic. It's a religion. It's no knock against him because he may be of a different religion. That's insane.
I mean, as long as you can separate your personal faith from the job you have at hand.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, you know,
so what difference does it make?
You know?
But, you know, and I'm not saying that he is a Muslim. I don't know. He said he wasn't, so I have to take him for his word. And like this idiot Donald Trump started these rumors about, well, he's not an American. That birth certificate is fake. How the hell does he know?
You know, it's funny.
It's just insane. How many candidates that ran for public office and for president, anybody ever asked them for their birth certificate? It's insane.
You know, like Trump, he actually admitted that, because every time he talks negatively about Chicago, he's like, you know, this is Obama's hometown. I'm like, well, I didn't know Chicago so Chicago, Kenya. I didn't know Chicago was in Kenya. So it's like, because Trump keeps bringing up, you know, oh yeah, this is Obama's hometown. But I thought you said he was born in Kenya, though.
Oh, sure. But like I said, everything this guy says is a walking contradiction. And like I tell my wife all the time, the biggest thing, the first time I heard him say it, I just thought, this man is such a fool when he says, I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me. I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Is so full of himself. So that would be the equivalent of me playing 1 year of high school quarterback saying I know more about football than Tom Brady. Just because I played football for a year. He says he knows more about the Army and ISIS and Army tactics because he went to a military school. I'm like, but the thought about him saying it, the thing that's so incredible, is he doesn't even have the common sense to know that sounds stupid, even though you could feel that way.
There's no one in his corner like telling him, hey.
But in your right mind, even if you feel like that, you have to know, I can't say that because people think I'm nuts. Dude has no filter. He just says whatever he wants, and he likes whatever comes out of his mouth. And it's just...
And then he made fun of John McCain for being captured. It's like, I disagree with John McCain on a lot of things, but it's like, the fact that you want to, you know, make fun of him for being captured, it's like... It's just a level of disrespect that, you know, like, I'm willing to have a debate with somebody, but when you want to like bring up something like that, it's just.
And it was a serious issue, and if you look at his body language when he made that comment, it was like he was doing slapstick comedy. I like people who weren't captured, okay? It's an embarrassment that this country elected somebody like him. I understand why he got elected. People are pissed off. They're angry at how the system is letting people down economically. I get that. But he is not the dude. He is not the guy.
Out of all the people running during the election, who would be your optimal choice?
John Kasich.
Really?
Yes.
What about Bernie Sanders?
I like Bernie a lot, but I just don't know how practical a lot of his ideas were. Uh, they're good, but there is so much in the way our country is formulated.
I mean, I think if you fight for, because like you're telling me about you watched Michael Moore's Sicko, and you thought it was shocking. I feel like if someone like Bernie was elected to the national stage and he, fights constantly, because that's what the Republicans do. They will, run down the football field without the ball in their hand and say we got a touchdown when the ball wasn't even in, your arm or whatever. And I feel like if Bernie was, elected, he could like really pound the pavement and say, hey, look, because the American people like the idea that, or like if they look at a single payer healthcare system, they like that idea. But a lot of times it's just like they've been tricked by Fox Media with like, oh, ask a Canadian, and there's it's like
we were tricked, because I used to believe that too, until I saw that documentary.
I mean, like I have a lot of friends from like foreign countries like Germany, Italy, France, etc. And like we'll talk about certain like issues like that, and they're just like, yeah, what's wrong with you guys?
Well, I wish, like I told you earlier, I think every American needs to see that documentary.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, because everybody needs to get mad as hell. Because I sat there, I was particularly the portion when they were discussing the guy who had severed 2 fingers, and the hospital gave him a choice. They told him the middle finger would be more expensive to reattach than his ring finger. So he opted, he said, I want to keep my wedding band on, so he took that, and they just threw the tip of his other finger away because he didn't have enough money. I thought, that sounds absolutely barbaric. This is America. That's a damn shame. And if he were in Germany and that happened, they wouldn't ask him for any money. They just sew his hand up, put his fingers back on, and send him home. And the pain medication wouldn't have cost him more than $1.40, because all of their prescriptions across the board cost the exact same. It doesn't matter what the medication is.
We're not allowed to negotiate, so.
So, like I said, but watching that, it was just shocking, because I had no idea that the rest of the world, their public health systems work because they're designed to take care of their citizens, to take care of the people. That's where they're designed. Here, the healthcare system is a business that brings in billions and billions and billions of dollars a year. And if you're sick and you don't have the insurance, screw you.
You're on scale.
And that is just insane. And we profess, like Donald Trump says, make America great again. This is how we treat our people. This is how we treat our people. We're expendable. And that's all it is. And if you don't have enough money to buy good health insurance, you're just screwed.
Yeah.
You're just screwed. And the fact that a pharmaceutical company can charge, I had gone to my pharmacist, I was taking Crestor, and I asked the pharmacist if I didn't have insurance, what that 30-day supply of Crestor would cost me out of pocket. It was over $460 for 30 pills. And I thought to myself then, somebody's ass should go to jail. Why are these insurance companies paying these pharmaceuticals companies this amount of money?
It's just flat out greed.
I said, that's just insane. And if you got that same medication in Germany or Europe someplace, probably that pill wouldn't cost you more than $1.40. It's just, or the prescription. Everything, all the costs for the medication is the same across the board. Here, they charge you, or if you go to the hospital, how much they charge you for one friggin' aspirin when you get it on your itemized hospital bill. We make billions and billions and billions of dollars business out of the insurance industry here. These people, once again, are paying lobbyists and paying these politicians to keep them in business. And in the other foreign countries, the insurance industry is designed to take care of the people, not for profit. There's the difference.
All right, so moving on to another political question. What are your thoughts on immigration? Do you think that did you have a fear of an illegal immigrant taking your job as a
No.
police officer?
No.
Do you think that based off the rhetoric of like Donald Trump, do you think these are bad people or I mean he called some of them are bad hombres or something like that? Or I mean, do you feel like we need to have a great wall on our southern border? Or?
That's ridiculous. I think the notion of having a wall, as a matter of fact, we've got more illegals leaving the country than we have coming in. I don't understand why. What do we need a wall for? There's more leaving than there are coming. They're going back.
And to spend tens of billions of dollars building a border wall, when places like Flint, Michigan don't have clean drinking water.
Why is it? Somebody ever thought about building a border wall between us and Canada? I'm sure you get just as many people coming from the north here. I've never heard anybody. Hey, you get Europeans coming like Donald Trump's wife, the one that he agreed to show the world her immigration papers when it was first discussed whether or not she was here legally. He said that he would lay all of that out for the American public to see. When, Donald? We still haven't seen him. It's.
I mean, and the thing is too is my grandparents, they own like a little small farm, and I used to pick crops and all that when I was younger. I thought it was fun, but to be out there for 12 hours in 110-degree weather, I mean, it's like Americans don't want to do those kind of jobs, and it's like, I mean, if you would deport 12 or 14 million people, our food supply would collapse.
And the manufacturers, the people who run those companies, would be very pissed off.
Oh, they'd be beyond angry.
That's why they wish Donald would stop.
Yeah.
Because it's cutting into their profits.
Like I think it was Alabama and Mississippi. They tried with strict immigration policy, and it failed. Like their agricultural industry almost collapsed because they couldn't find American workers to do, 12-hour day shifts picking orange.
Every society has. You have various layers of how we live in all societies. Everybody's got a job to do. And a lot of the immigrants that come here from South America, they're willing to do these jobs because it's more money than they've ever made in their lives.
Yeah,
not demeaning anybody, but this is the beginning of say, an American family in 20, 30 years. Say that immigrant comes here, marries, has a wife, they raise a kid, the kid grows up as an American, goes to school, gets educated, goes to college. It's the beginning. That they come here
for a better life.
For a better life. And Jeb Bush said it so eloquently. It's an act of love. And Donald Trump, being the fool that he is, mocked him for saying such a thing.
Of course he's for his wife's it's
the same thing. The European settlers that came here, that's why they came here, for a better life. And he mocked him. And I just thought, what an insensitive bore. And people still voted for this dude for president. I'm like, like I said, I was no Hillary lover, but I kept hearing that thing about there's a binary choice. You're damn right it's a binary choice. He's a friggin' idiot.
Hillary has her problems like the corporatism, but Republicans in the especially Ted Cruz, Donald Trump is their corporatism is on steroids. I mean, he's putting ExxonMobil as the head of Secretary of State.
God. That notion about draining the swamp. Yeah. And he's bringing in truckloads of toxic sludge and filling it up. It's going to overflow its banks.
Yeah, right into the American people's,
I tell you, like I said, he always touted that book, The Art of the Deal. This is the ultimate art of the deal. How he suckered the American public into electing him president. And I'll bet you, old dude laughs his ass off privately every day, and he cannot believe that he actually got these people to vote for him for president. Because it's the craziest thing any of us could ever imagine.
And then he has like cabinet picks like Jeff Sessions, who said that the KKK, or he only came out against the KKK when he found out they were like smoking weed or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going to be the Attorney General.
It's these people like Jeff Sessions are lower than pond scum. Because the thing is, if you are who you say you are, if you're representing who you were when you were running, wanted to be considered for a federal judgeship, if that's who you are, if you're this redneck, racist dude that believes in flying the Confederate flag and stuff, and I'd have more respect for you if you stood up and just said, this is who I am. I just think people like him are punks. It does. If this is who you are, then that's who you are. If that disqualifies you from taking this position, then that's what you deserve.
I mean, at least David Duke has the, you know.
At least exactly. At least he has the conviction to stand up for what he believes in. I have more respect for David Duke than I have for people like Jeff Sessions, because he's a coward. He's a coward. He's willing to go to that hearing and say anything he can to get himself in that position, and then he acts like this. Then it's like a sneak attack. Aha, now I'm in here, I'll do whatever I want. And it just, I don't have any respect for people like him. If that's how you feel, then just tell me that's how you feel. Then I know how to take you.
And then, what else was I about to say? And then also talking about, what are your thoughts on Ben Carson? He was put in charge of the urban something. You don't like Ben Carson?
Ben Carson is a brilliant surgeon.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's all. That's all I can say about Ben Carson. Well, I'd say Ben Carson was a brilliant surgeon. Ben Carson is one of the most naive people that I've ever seen attempt to run for public office. This guy, personally, really, I think there's something wrong with him. And tell me this. You're running for president. What are you doing talking about what's inside of the pyramids? What does that have to do with anything? When I heard him say that there's what they used the pyramids for was to store grain. What? Yes, all these people, these archaeologists will tell you something different, but I know they were designed to store grains. He's a big a fool as Donald Trump. What the hell has I got? First of all, who told you that? Where is the evidence of that? I mean, he just says things that are just so inane that you're wondering, what's wrong with this guy? And the fact that Donald Trump wants to put him in charge of public housing, what does he know about this? Why are you hiring these people that don't have, first of all, he doesn't have any experience in public administration. He doesn't have any experience of doing anything for anybody other than himself during his whole work life, which is nothing wrong with that. He's a surgeon. He's a brilliant surgeon.
I mean, just because you can, fly a plane doesn't mean you can drive a submarine.
You got it.
It's like
you got it.
Like
you got it.
I'm an engineer and I know like work circuits, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to, I don't know, build a bridge. That's not. See,
that's what one of Donald Trump's biggest failures is. He thinks because he can amass millions of dollars, and I did say millions because they don't think you're a billionaire, Donald. But the thing is, he knows how to hustle. You don't know how to run a country. You know how to make money. I'll give you that. But he doesn't know how to run a country. And I've just never seen somebody with so much money and to profess to be so great who has such little class. He is so classless. He's painfully inarticulate for someone who's supposed to be so great. And his personal appearance, he looks like crap. I'm like, what woman, if he didn't have money, he wouldn't get any? I mean, look at this dude. Do you know how many women do you know would want to lay in the bed with Donald Trump? And he got the nerve to talk about this woman gaining weight. She was fat. Donald, did you ever look in the mirror? God,
I remember you told me like,
unbelievable.
How does his wife let him go out the house?
I can't look that hair, man. He looks like a friggin' badger from the side. He got this in the front, this in the back, and pot belly. His suits fit ill. I know they're custom made, but is it his body or poor tailors? Because he looks like he's wearing a sack of potatoes. But seriously, he's a horrible looking guy. And he's so inarticulate. He is so crass.
I remember someone said that, like he's going to be the most, because they were talking about how fit, like Hillary Clinton is, and like he's like, a Fox News pundit said that Donald Trump's going to be the most healthiest president ever, and then they showed him, with his shirt off, and then Barack Obama with his shirt off on the beach, and it's like he's like, come on.
Or you see him sitting on his plane. That was the one thing that got me. I'm gonna tell you, if I'm a billionaire and I'm having people bring me some food on my plane, I'm having them bring me up, say a nice salmon, a couple roasted asparagus, something like that. This dude has got a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken sitting in front of him. Classless. Dude is classless, man. And Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket.
And speaking of, because this is the last political question, and what are your thoughts on Michelle Obama being criticized by the likes of Christie for her, her Get Healthy campaign? Like Christie said
What's wrong with it?
Well, Christie criticized Michelle Obama, saying that she's trying to dictate, how we feed our children and stuff.
Someone needs to. It's funny you should mention that. A friend of mine, an Akron policeman, we had this conversation once because he was highly agitated at the fact that the school that his son was going to, because of Michelle Obama, changed their diet and what they were feeding the kids at school. Told them take the pop machines out of the school. He was incensed that they were taking the soda machines out of the school. He was incensed that his son had to eat healthy. He thought his son should eat anything he wanted. And I'm like, why are you tripping over them trying to feed your kid healthy food? He can drink pop when he's home if it's that big a deal to you. I think our country, we feed our people crap. We advertise it on television. They don't do that in Europe and other countries. When you walk down the street and you're buying food, they don't pump this kind of stuff into their citizens. They just don't.
My grandmother,
It's all part of national health care. Like I said, all of it's tied together. All the junk food industry makes billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Food deserts too.
So of course they're going to let this stuff be advertised on television. Because of the lobbyists in Washington and the congressmen that are getting their pocket stuff by the retailers.
But like my grandmother, she's from Switzerland, and like some of the plates she has from over there, I mean, like the largest plates are 33% smaller in diameter than like the plates we typically use, and it's just like they just eat less.
I was watching. There was a show. I can't remember the name of it. It was named after a guy. I think it might have been on the Travel Channel. Well, he goes all over the world testing different fairs from different countries. And he was walking down the street. I want to say they were in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And they were walking out in an area where there were people about. There were different vendors selling food and stuff. And he wanted to get a sandwich. And so his host told him, well, what are you looking for? And he says, how about a nice juicy burger? It ain't happening here, man. They don't sell them like that openly. You had to go buy fish or something like that. That's all they had. This is what people eat. They don't pump a lot of bad food into their citizens. Why? Because it's unhealthy. Why? Because it makes a difference in their health care. Why? Because it's cheaper if we take better care of our citizens.
But Christie, of all people, was criticizing her.
I heard that repugnant man
You don't
Make
like
a,
Chris Christie?
oh, I used to. Like I said, I'm a Republican. There was a time where I had a lot of respect for Chris Christie. I would have voted for Chris Christie for president. What turned me against Chris Christie was how disrespectful he was to Barack Obama. After Hurricane Sandy struck, Barack Obama went there. Chris Christie wrapped his chubby little arms all around him, and it was a great deal because the president came to assure them that they were going to take care of this problem, and he got roundly criticized by other Republicans for being so friendly to the President of the United States. I'm like, these people are out of their mind. This is the president. They were angry because this Republican was friendly toward the president. You know, not to mention, well, the president was there to help him get things done for his citizens of his state. And then came Bridgegate. And his attitude and the way he talked about people.
Sit down and shut up.
I just thought, he's a repugnant piece of crap. And then when he was asked about, oh, what was his name? Was it Bill Baroni? The first guy not the first guy he got rid of. David Wildstein or something like that. What's his name? Well, anyway, when they said when it was reported that the two of them went to the same high school, and then Chris Christie made the comment about, I don't really know who that guy is. When I was in high school, they said, well, he was the manager of the baseball team. You played on the baseball team. And he said, well, I was a jock. The jocks didn't hang around with the other kids. And I looked at this tub and I thought, you were a jock? What the hell happened to you? God damn, this dude has got, if you were a jock and then you look like you look now, this dude has no self-discipline.
And then also too, he had the nerve to say that because he vetoed like a marijuana legalization thing because he says marijuana is a poor health decision.
What would he know about a poor health decision?
I just want to.
What would he know? Oh God, Chris Christie, my God, I could. He was another one, you know. And I'm not. Wow, I mean, because to look like he looks, he was such a mean and spiteful person. He was an easy target to make fun of because what you had to say something about him. But the dude, oh man, but I knew Bridgegate, when Bridgegate came and all this stuff, everything fell in its place. I told people back then, and it's true, people that know me know this. I said, politically, he's through. And this whole thing with the president running for president and not winning the nomination, and subsequently the people that he hired in his cabinet came out and said, of course he knew. Everybody knew he knew. It was just a matter of getting someone to admit that they told him. Because he said that he ran his office and he knew everything that was going on in his office. Well, how the hell did this escape you? Chris Christie is an awful person. And he's getting exactly what he deserves.
All right, so moving back on to topics of like the police and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on the militarization of various police departments?
I know a lot of people, particularly Al Sharpton, who I'm not real fond of, but this dude, they think it's terrible that police officers have taken on an almost militaristic presence in our major cities. It's necessary. I understand the optics. I get it. But we live in a different time now. This isn't the 1930s and 1940s. Many of the criminals have outgunned the police departments for years. The fact that we are under the constant threat of terrorism is another reason police departments should be armed in a quasi-militaristic sense. Because if the cities are under terrorist attack, the police are your first line of defense. Before the troops are sent in, before anything else happens, the police are always the first line of defense. We better be armed. Now, this is not to say that we need to to go about our daily jobs dressed like military police. But we have to be trained, we have to be prepared, and there is nothing wrong with having these assets available to the police department. It's how they're deployed is the reason I think a lot of people get agitated. Mm-hmm. They need to understand that. We live in a different time.
I mean, like, you know, people, they want to say, they were saying, like, you know, why do police officers need to have, like, fully automatic, you know, like, assault rifles and, like,
because
you know,
some of the people that you may encounter will have them.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why
you can't. I mean, people, you know, like, people don't just have, like, 6-shot Saturday Night Specials.
You
they
got
have,
it.
You know, like Uzis that can spray.
Because of the NRA, people can go out and buy whatever they want. There's your problem. Because I know you and I differ on the gun issue. Mm-hmm. I think I think there are too many guns in our society. I think everybody deserves the right to be armed, to have a gun in their homes. I'm against carry conceal permits. And I know we differ on that, but because
that's
more guns is not the answer for our society.
Okay.
It's just making it less safe to have more guns.
So, like, your thoughts on, like, concealed carry, you're against that? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then also, what about, like, assault rifles, like AR-15s and things like that?
I don't think they're necessary. Now, because, and I know it may sound a little hypocritical, yeah, I want to buy one. Mm-hmm. I want to buy one because there are no limitations to people owning these types of weapons. So that means I want to buy one because there's other fools out here that may have them. But I would never advocate to buy an AR-15, sling it over my shoulder and walk down the street. I just think that's ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's crazy.
I mean, like, you've seen in Akron where there was a guy walking around, like, mm-hmm. confidently with, you know, AR-15. Yeah. It's like, you know, the thing is, like, yeah, I guess you have that right to do so, but then, like, you just look silly doing it, you know?
Well,
it makes people who are, like reasonable, responsible gun owners, I would say, like, sort of look bad because, you know, when you're, like, I mean, it's almost like you're trying to intimidate people.
Sure. And I think they know what they're doing. They're doing it for shock value. They're not really concerned about whether or not they're going to be attacked. Because who walks around every day thinking, I got to have an AR-15 because somebody might shoot me?
I mean,
if you're there mentally, then you need to go somewhere else to live. Because people don't walk around, or shouldn't walk around, anticipating being shot every day. I mean, it happens.
Yeah. But I mean, in some parts of our country, you know, it's pretty dangerous. And if you have to work in these areas, you know, let's say like concealed carry, wouldn't you want to have the ability to protect yourself? Mm-hmm.
Well, because most of the time, when you really think about it, most of the time, or most of the victims of shootings, people who die of gunshot wounds, probably 90% or more are shot by someone they know, mm-hmm. someone they're familiar with, someone who is coming to their life because of their own circumstances. These are people you deal with, people you hang out with, people that have that capacity to shoot people. Mm-hmm. And those victims know that these people are nuts and have the capacity to shoot people, but they hang out with them anyway.
That's why, you know, I always make sure, like, the people I'm surrounded by are
all... And so, but there's the percentage of innocent victims that are being accosted, who are being robbed or being assaulted for other reasons by a stranger. But strangers, percentage-wise, strangers don't always go out and just shoot people. Except for when you have these mass shootings, where you get these crazies that go out and do that. But on a day-to-day basis, shootings that the police encounter like that on a day-to-day basis, the victim and the suspect often have some sort of relationship. So they're not just strangers shooting each other.
All right, and the next question would be, all right, so on the issue of police shootings, like such as, you know, the ones you see in the news, mm-hmm. things like that, do you think that training or police slash body cameras are the solution to, I guess, like maybe slowing, or not slowing, but like reducing the amount of like police shootings that might happen unjustly?
I think it's a fact of life, and there are a lot of variables. Because just like any occupation, a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a judge, there's always a standard that has to be met by any of these groups I just spoke of. There always has to be a standard. But there is never one defined way to do anything. You may have a nurse that has a different opinion as to how this needs to be done on a patient. A police officer. Some people are smarter, some people are stronger, some people have a better capacity to reason, some people's reaction time may be slower. All these variables go into how police perceive and how they react to a stimulus, what things that they see that make them have to perform. We used to have this training tool called the fax machine. And basically what that was, it was a simulated situation where a police officer, we're given a scenario, and you're given a gun that it's the size of your service gun, but it doesn't fire bullets, it fires electronic.
It's like a 3D thing or something, like a...
Yeah, you're firing a beam
Okay.
toward a projection screen. And it records your accuracy. If you are accurate with your shots, it will disable your target. You might send 6 guys in there to do this simulated training session. You might get, out of the 6 guys, you might get 4 different reactions as to when you fire and how many shots you fire. So my point is, we all receive the same training, but none of us react to anything the exact same way.
Because everyone has different temperament.
Everybody has different temperament. Like I said, one person may feel intimidated. Say, for instance, if you're confronting a person who's larger, and the officer responding is someone who's slighter. His level of confidence of what to do is going to be different from a guy who may be the same size as the subject, because you feel less intimidated because of the size differential. So all of these little aspects go in. You say, another example is, you have a white officer, a guy that grew up in a predominantly white suburban area. Now he's gone through this training, he comes into this city, now he's going to be dealing with people's daily habits, their rituals, what motivates them. He has no idea. So he doesn't react to that black youth or black man or black woman the same way I would. Because, say, I grew up in the inner city, these are the types of people that I've dealt with and seen all my life. I feel less intimidated, I feel less threatened. I may not be as aggressive. He may not feel that way, but he's only doing that because he's trying to protect himself.
Can you give an example, maybe when you were in the police force, where your temperament might have been different from your officers?
I was assisting an officer, a white officer, on a call one day at a housing project, and I'm alone in my car. He was also a single, and I hear over the radio him calling for a census. He needs some backup. I could hear his voice registered, like on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as how excited he was. He was like a 9.5.
Wow.
And he's like, "Send me some backup right away. This thing is getting out of hand. These people are here going crazy. Send another car right away." I roll up, I get out, I hear this shouting, this screaming. I walk up, I open the door. There's 2 women. These 2 gay women, they're lovers. one wants to leave, the other one wants her to stay. That's why they're arguing. Because there was a disagreement. I want to get my stuff and I want to leave. So she's trying to convince this woman to stay. They're angry at each other. He mistakes their aggression towards each other as threatening towards him. Because he's telling them to quiet down, they won't. They're still arguing. So I walk in, I see what's going on. I ask the one woman what's her name. She tells me her name. I said, what's the problem? She says, I just want to get my shit and I'm ready to go. So I get on the radio, I cancel. I said, we're good here. We got this under control. And I took her outside. I asked him to speak to the other woman. I took her outside. She told me what happened. They had a lover's quarrel. She just wanted to get her stuff and go to her mother's house. So I said, okay, come in the house. I'll go upstairs with you, pack some things in your bag. She packed some things in her bag, brought it back down to my cruiser, put her in the car, and I drove her to her mother's house. Clear. It's over. Dude was just off the chain, thinking like this was next to World War II. And I'm like, it ain't that big of a deal. He could not control them, so he felt threatened. And I was just, I like the guy. I see him from time to time now. I never mentioned that to anybody else because I felt bad for him. But it was like, I got it immediately. He just did not understand the situation. And he felt threatened, and there's no doubt in my mind it's because of his surroundings. It made him uncomfortable.
So just different officers' backgrounds
Yes.
will affect their temperament.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And it doesn't mean he's a bad cop.
Yeah.
It's just that this is something he's not accustomed to. And this is something that needs to be addressed in training about sensitivity toward other people. But that's not an easy thing to tackle. And it just isn't.
And a lot of people, they hear like sensitivity as being something that's like, oh, negative and will reduce the performance of police officers.
And it doesn't at all. It just makes you more aware of your surroundings and how to deal with it. Because I had someone ask me once, it was a child. I was talking to some kids at school, and a kid asked me one day if I was ever scared. Was I ever scared at something at work? And I says, yeah. And the other kid looked at me and mocked me like, oh, you're a police officer. You're not supposed to be scared. And I said, I'm human. I said, no, I said, it's a very unwise person that's never scared. I said, fear only heightens your awareness of things around you. It doesn't mean you. I said, what you're asking me is if I'm a coward. No, I'm not a coward. There's a difference between fear and being a coward. Fear makes you aware of the things around you. It's that thing you hear people talk about, the hair sticking up on the back of your neck. It's your senses working, telling you there's danger afoot. You better be scared, because if you're not scared, then you become oblivious to the dangers around you. There's a difference.
And with some of these like police shootings, what are your thoughts on? I'm almost going on the list, but Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Phillando Castille, and the South Carolina cop shooting.
Well, I get into these debates with a lot of other friends of mine my age. Each one of those incidences that you named are completely different.
Exactly.
And a lot of people, especially in the media, Al Sharpton, they try to group all these things together. Hardly any of them are the same. Trayvon Martin I would immediately toss out, mostly because he was not shot by a law enforcement officer. He was shot by some killer. And I'll call George, what's the dude's name? George Zimmerman. I call him what he is. He's a murderer. He's a child murderer. And he's just very lucky that he's not in prison. He killed the kid. This is a guy who involved himself in something he had no business doing whatsoever. And he ends up killing this kid who wasn't bothering anybody, hadn't done anything, but he's dead. And you talked about Tamir Rice. It's a horrible tragedy. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy. But once again, like I was explaining, police officers get training, We all go to the academy together. We all receive the same firearms training, but we're not the same. We don't all act in unison toward the same situations that we encounter. We simply don't.
Yeah, you guys aren't robots.
We're not robots. And the fact that Tamir Rice was shot, I guarantee you, if you put 10 cops in that exact same scenario, at least half of them would have shot that kid. At least half. And that's the truth. People don't want to hear it, but it's the truth. Because they keep using their own justification, saying, well, the dispatcher told the officers that it was probably a toy and that it was a child. Police officers are trained from day one. You listen to the radio, you get as much information as you can, but these are what you rely on, not what someone's telling you over the radio, because oftentimes that information is completely inaccurate. And if every officer went by what the radio told him every time, he'd probably end up getting himself in a lot of trouble, because you don't know what this situation is until you get there. No, go ahead.
And you can't probably tell that if it's a toy gun or not.
No, you can't. You can't tell. And officers are also understanding, like I said, when you go through the FATS training, and in your police academy, we study police shootings all over the country. A police officer, if you don't have your gun in your hand, if you walk upon a guy and he's got a gun in his hand, your gun is still in your holster, and he starts to raise his gun, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead. Because you cannot pull your gun out and fire and shoot him before he shoots you. It's just impossible.
Some people are talking about, like, well, you shot him in 3 seconds, but still it's like, like I can squeeze out 5 rounds of my Glock in 3 seconds.
That's my whole point. And see, people are being critical. Okay, this guy may have been a little goofy. A lot of people are goofy. This police officer, a lot of people are goofy. But I don't believe that he committed a crime. Okay. I certainly don't believe he went to that park with the intent of shooting that boy. He went to that park because he was sent to that park, because someone called him to that park, because someone was walking down the sidewalk pointing a gun at people. And then also people made a point of saying, well, that person called, said, it scared the crap out of me. This is where I was critical of Al Sharpton. He kind of circumvented those statements by not mentioning the person that made the call. When the person made the call, this is what they said. He pointed a gun at somebody. It might be a toy. This might be a kid, but it scared the shit out of me. So what that tells me is that person was this close to the kid. That split second, he thought it was real. He said it because it scared the shit out of me. So how is that officer supposed to differentiate in that same amount of time? And see, Al Sharpton conveniently left that out, that the caller stated that it scared the shit out of me. He thought it was real for a split second. And that officer, the decision to pull that trigger only took a split second. You get out of the car and I guarantee you, if you're going on a call with a gun, you should have your hand on your gun, if not out of the holster, down your side. I mean, you don't get out, if you're unsure and you get out of the cruiser, you don't always get out, guns pointed, but you got it. And it was always, with me, it was always like you take the gun out and you're hidden. So it's not obvious that I'm pointing a gun at you. I'm trying to assess the danger threat. I'm trying to assess whether or not I need to take more aggressive action. But I'm not trying to intimidate anybody by getting out of the car with my gun, excuse me, pointed at them.
What about Eric Garner?
Once again, I think that's a tragedy, but this brother brought death to his own doorstep. And people don't want to look at that as factual. Eric Garner, what he was doing was petty, sure enough. Selling loose cigarettes it's petty. But in the Eric Garner case, I think there's enough blame to go around on both sides. Eric Garner versus the police. I think the police handled the situation poorly.
How would you have handled that?
I would have wrote this big brother a summons because there was a crowd starting to gather. If you saw the footage, there was a crowd starting to gather. He's selling Lucy's. It ain't a big deal. And the crowd started gathering. People stand out there holding up their cell phones. Arthur Hill would have said, hey, write this dude a summons and let's get the hell out of here. That's exactly what I would have done. And the sergeant that was on scene did not do any of those officers any justice. He should have made the call. Write him a summons and let's go.
What about Mike Brown?
Mike Brown, another situation. I can't totally justify the police firing shots the way he did, but damn it, Michael Brown brought death to his doorstep. You can, brothers know. You walk up to another dude and say, fuck you. It's on. What did Michael Brown think was going to happen when he told the police officers, hey, get out of the middle of the street, get up on the sidewalk. And he turns around and yells, fuck you. What did he think was going to happen? Seriously.
He just robbed the store too. And it's like...
But then, see, that's the whole thing. That's even more reason to show you that this guy was just a stone nut. He knew he had just robbed the guy at the store. He knew he had just done that. Yet, when the police stop him, the police officer doesn't even bring it up. So he had to know. The police don't even know I did this yet. So instead of getting on the sidewalk and go, man, I got away with that one, he brings more attention to his stupid ass by yelling, fuck you, to the police officer. I'm like, what the hell? Dude, you just robbed the store. Get your ass on the sidewalk and be gone. I'm Michael Brown. Fuck you. What a moron. And like I said, I'm not justifying the guy shooting him the way he did, but then it got worse. When you're challenging the police officer's authority by telling him fuck you. You're challenging his authority. You know darn well you're going to have a confrontation. Any of y'all out there know what I'm saying is the truth. You yell at a police officer, fuck you, there's going to be a confrontation. So the officer backs up, and what does Michael Brown do? He walks up to the police officer. The police officer's going to get out of the car to confront him. He pushes the door shut on the police officer. Then he punches him through the window.
Oh, yeah, I did.
I'm like, and then everything unfolded when he got out of the car and he ends up shooting him. I'm like, what the hell? You yell at the police, you just robbed the store, told the police officer, fuck you, pinned him into his car and punches him in the side of the face. And you want to make a martyr out of him. Amazing. Like I said, I'm not justifying the number of shots the officer fired to kill this guy. I certainly wouldn't have done that. But if you think this guy wasn't complicit in his death, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself.
What about Phillando Castille? The guy in...
That was Minnesota. Woo! The officer that shot him probably never should have been a police officer. Because if you're that scared, and I can give you a good example, when the being allowed to carry a gun here in Akron, in Ohio, at that time I was assigned to the traffic unit, and I was taking a traffic crash accident report. I get out of the car, I walk up to this dude, he's in his car, the car is bent up, jacked up, and he's sitting in his car. He goes, officer, same thing Castille did. He says, officer, I have a carry concealed permit, and my gun is right here. And he raises up his jacket, and there's his gun. I didn't freak out. I didn't pull my gun on him. I didn't shoot him. I reached in the car, took the gun out, dropped the clip out, ejected the shell out, put the gun in my gun belt, stuck the clip in my pocket, put the bullet in my other pocket, took my accident report. Ambulance came, took him to jail. I gave him a receipt for his gun.
They took him to jail?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The ambulance came. They took him to the hospital.
Okay.
Towed his car. I took his weapon to the station, tagged it, put it in the vault in DB, and when the guy got out of the hospital, he came down and claimed his gun. I didn't shoot him. And this is what this guy did. He advised the officer, I have a permit, I am carrying my gun. And then the police officer pulls out his gun and shoots him. That's crazy. And the only reason I can speak to it is because it happened to me. I've never once felt threatened. Because if the dude is going to tell you, I have a permit to carry my gun and here's my gun, I don't think his intention is to shoot me. Because if he was going to shoot me, he wouldn't tell me that he's got a gun. And so how this guy reacted to that, I thought this dude never should have been a cop.
What about the South Carolina police officer that shot the guy running away? What are your thoughts on that?
The jury's decision, one of the jurors' decision not to find this guy guilty is a coward. Because there is no way you can look at that footage and determine that that was not a cold-blooded killing. That was, he made no effort to, if you ever notice, he didn't run 1 foot. When that guy ran, dude's reaction was this. He didn't make one attempt to try to subdue him. He just pulled out his gun and started shooting. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. When I saw it, I cringed. I cringed. Because I couldn't. I had an incident. My partner and I were working one night, and we were driving down the street. And we were approaching a bar that was notorious. We used to call it the OK Corral. It was called the Hub Line. It's on Rhodes Avenue. Always getting shootings there. My partner and I are cruising down the street. It's like 1:30 in the morning. We're just cruising, talking. And we are about 70 yards from the front of this bar. All of a sudden, we see people running, hear tires squealing, people running everywhere. We're like, what the? So my partner gets on the radio, and he says, there's a disturbance at the Hub Line, and we're going to be investigating. So we're just creeping, because we're trying to see why is everybody running. So we're moving up pretty slow, and we look up, and I see a guy standing in front of the bar. He's facing south. His back is to us. There was a street there called Berry. He's standing at the corner of Rhodes and Berry, but he's facing away from us. And I saw a gun in his hand. And he's looking up and down the street. He's looking to his right, to his left, to his right, to his left. We're coming up behind him. He doesn't see us. None of the people running ever say, hey, the police are here. They didn't say anything. We cruise up. I opened my car door, and I told my partner, I said, he's got a gun. My partner says, no, man, he's got 2 guns. And then I could see the other one. He had one in each hand, 2 chrome pistols. But he had his back to me. So I got out of the car. I got the shotgun out of the shotgun rack, cranked one in. I started walking up on the sidewalk. I'm probably about maybe 15, 20 feet behind this dude. Mm-hmm. And I got my shotgun pointed right at his back. In my head, I'm thinking, if he turns around, you got to shoot him. So as soon as I get the gun rested in good spot, I say, you with the guns, drop him. What he did was he never turned around. He put the guns down to his side. He lowered his hands. Guns were down to his side. He looked over his shoulder, and he let them go. And they fell to the ground, and he took off running. Anyway, to shorten the story, we ended up catching the dude. And he ended up, we didn't know what had happened. He shot 4 people inside the bar. He had shot 4 people. But the call had never gone out over the radio, so we didn't know what he had done yet. Mm-hmm. And so I guess some of the people that were there were angry that this dude from the east side came over to the west side, popped 4 people in the bar, and then he walks up to me and he goes, man, you had it. I said, what? He says, man, you had him. Why didn't you shoot him? I looked at the dude, and swear to God, I looked at him and I said, get the fuck away from me. Because I'm thinking, he wanted me to shoot this dude in the back. Essentially, that's what I would have been doing. I would have shot him in the back. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I'm thinking, if he turns around, I have to shoot him. Turning around meaning turning to face me with the guns. But he never did. He put both arms down, and he looked over his shoulder. And when he saw it was the police, he dropped the guns and he ran. There was no reason to shoot him. On the same hand, you put 10 officers in that same situation, once again, I will bet you, and at least 4 of them probably would have shot him. And they probably would have been justified. But in my mind, I could not, it's funny, explaining it now, it seems long, but when you're in the moment, it happens so quick. But it's incredible how in your head it's happening very slow, your thoughts are very clear, and you don't panic. And I'm not saying that I'm this brave guy, but I never felt panicked, and I didn't feel in danger. I felt like I had the upper hand. So there was no reason to shoot the dude. But it's amazing how people, now if I would have shot that dude in the back and they wanted to prosecute me for it, that same guy asked me why didn't I shoot him probably would have been the one testifying saying, yeah, he just shot the dude in the back for no reason. So I'm glad and I remember I was married at the time, and when I got home and I was telling my wife about what happened, and that's what she said to me. She says, why didn't you shoot him? He could have turned around and shot you. And I'm like, you weren't gonna shoot me. Because I like I said, he had his back to me, and I had a Remington 850 pump shotgun. There was no way he was going to be able to turn around and find me with his eyes before I could shoot him. Yeah, that just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you would have
so there was no reason to shoot him.
Yeah.
No reason. So, like I said, but that was just me. Another guy might have. So that's why I'm not going to be I'm not real critical about all these police shootings. There's some I'm critical of, like
the one in South Carolina.
The one in South Carolina, and this recent one in Hudson is kind of freaking me out.
What was that about?
Oh, it was a young law student. I believe he was a Muslim student from another country, and he was driving his car, and he had a traffic accident. He skipped another car. His car flips over. This police officer comes up. He says the guy jumps out of his car and he's running wildly. He's running wildly. So he pursues the guy. And the first thing that struck me was he drew, not that he drew the gun, but he gave a verbal command or statement saying, stop or I'll shoot. Why? It's a traffic accident. Why?
Maybe he's like startled that he might, if he's from like you say he's Middle Eastern or something.
Yes.
He might be scared.
But that's a personal problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there to do this job. Just because he's of Middle Eastern descent, there's no reason to pull a gun on him. And so, but that's what he said. Then he said that he chased him for a while, and they got into a fight and they struggled over the gun, and he fired and he killed the guy. That was his original statement. And then when the BCI investigators got involved, then you find out that he fired 6 shots. That's a big difference from what his original statement was. And not only that, the account of how the shots were fired were like, there were a series of 3 shots, then a pause, and whimpering. They just, the video camera from the car picked up the sound of the whimpering and the gunshots. There were 3 boom, 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 whimpering. They didn't say who, they said a male whimpering. Then you heard boom, boom, boom. And this guy was shot in the face once, and in the leg and in the arm. I think he was hit like 3 different times. I'm having a real hard, from what he said and from what the audio picked up from the car, and the sequence of shots doesn't match what he said happened to me.
And
as an investigator, I have a problem with that.
All right, so then moving to the next question, because it's like, what time you gotta pick up?
What time is it?
It's like 1:40.
Oh yeah, I gotta pick up the boys at 2:30.
Okay, so we only have a few more questions, but what would be your solution to fixing the issues of violence within the inner city communities?
Jobs.
Jobs.
Jobs. The number one cause. Look, like I said earlier too, when I was getting out of high school, crime wasn't. I grew up in the inner city. Grew up in the inner city. Went to school. Came back then. You could leave school and come home to eat lunch because my family lived like 2 blocks from the school. So as long as you were back.
Was this the 60s or?
70s.
70s.
I graduated from high school in 1972. You could leave school for lunch if you lived close enough. As long as you were back by the start of your next class, you could do that. So I would go home for lunch. I lived in the inner city. 1 block off of Worcester Avenue, at the base of Shabandi Hill. My parents never locked the front door, so I didn't need a key. I just go walk in the front door, eat my lunch, go back to school. In the inner city.
Yeah, wow. I know where that, like, Worcester and all that
that's
is.
That's where I grew up. But the point is, everybody had a job. Everybody worked. Now you're driving down the street, you see all these brothers hanging out on the corner, just milling around, doing stuff, slinging, whatever. I guarantee you, if there were more jobs available that people could actually go out and earn a good living and have a decent life, you would have much fewer people on the streets. Not saying that because there's some people that's who they are. That's what they want to do. They're criminals. That's what they're going to do. But I guarantee you, a large portion of those people would go to work every day if there were decent jobs available. Jobs is the number one reason, or number one preventive measure to me to lessen crime in the inner city. Get people to work.
I like that. Yeah. And then the next question is, what are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and All Lives Matter?
They all matter. And I get upset with people who think Black Lives Matter is some evil movement. It's a very simplistic statement. And they're not saying white lives don't matter. They're not saying blue lives don't matter. They're just saying that give us more consideration when there's a confrontation. When the police come into our communities, don't be so quick to escalate the violence against us so immediately. That's all they're saying. And like I said, in being a black man and being a former black police officer and growing up in the neighborhood, I got a real good perspective, a really good perspective. I'm not one of these guys that are going to demonize the citizen every time, because sometimes the citizens are right. But I'm certainly not going to sit here and demonize the police all the time, because sometimes the police are right. And the citizens don't seem to understand. Every time there is a shooting or a confrontation between the police and the community, they always want to blame 100% the police. The police need to do this. The police need better training. Police shouldn't have these types of guns. What about the citizens' right? What about the citizens' responsibility to the police department? What about their responsibility not to be so aggressive and not be so disrespectful to the police? Michael Brown being a good example. The police officer has every right to tell you to get out of the street. People say, well, that's harassment. No, it's not. He's jaywalking. It's still against the law. And the police officer who is working has every right to tell you to get your dumb ass out of the middle of the street and get on the sidewalk. And what was Michael Brown's response? Fuck you. Don't tell me he wasn't complicit in what happened to him. I mean, if you're out in the street and you have a confrontation with another guy, and he says to you, fuck you, what do you think is going to happen?
Oh, I'm probably going to curse at him too.
Or y'all going to be banging. So why do people think police are supposed to be immune to someone telling you, fuck you? Come on now. Get real. Don't make it act as if this guy, and to Michael Brown's mother and father, same thing. No disrespect to you guys, but you're lying to yourselves when you tell everybody how great your son was and that he was not a troubled person. That's a lie, and you know it. Because a kid that is not a problem does not go out and do what he did just before he got shot. That's just you don't just get that way. Everybody that knows Michael Brown has a story about what something that Michael Brown did to someone. I guarantee you. But like I said, I'm not absolving the police officer for his actions. However, Michael Brown brought death to his doorstep by his own actions. It could have been avoided. First of all, like I said, when the dude told him to get on the sidewalk, yes sir, officer, it would have been over. But he chose to escalate it by telling the police officer, fuck you. And when you do that to a cop, anybody out here walking knows doggone well you're going to have a confrontation now. So he got the confrontation. And like I said, once again, not saying that the officer was justified in firing the shots the way he did. But do not make this dude a martyr.
You know, I was actually in a situation back when I was in the 12th grade in high school. Remember I told you I was doing the vocational at East High School? Mm-hmm. And I was walking to the bus stop down like by East Market, because that's before I found out that there's actually a bus that goes to the front of the building, because I used to get out early or whatever, and I wouldn't wait till like 8th period. But I walked down to East Market, and the Circle K over there got robbed, and there was a police officer who responded to the call, and he literally was like probably this close away from his car from like hitting me. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, officer, did I do something wrong? And like the way I responded to him, he basically said, oh, we're searching for someone, but you know, you sound way too calm, because we got a call that the guy who robbed this place was like irate and sort of like on drugs or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh no, I just got out of school up there, I'm sorry for anything or whatever. And he's like, okay, I'm sorry about that. And you know, he just went on about his you know, like he went on to the gas station. But I feel like, you know, the way that people handle situations with police, it's like, you know, if you give respect, they'll like sort of give respect back. Like there are police officers who are like, you know, like assholes and stuff like that. But there's assholes in every profession. In every profession. And you know, I get so tired of people always wanting to lump cops into this like we're this monolithic. Yeah, it's just not. We're not. We're just like you said, anybody else. We all don't treat everybody the same in any given situation. But people have got to be fair and really honest with themselves, given all the circumstances that culminated into these deaths. There's plenty blame to go around on both sides. And like I said, when the cops are wrong, I'm going to call it the way I see it. And when the citizen is wrong, I'm going to call it the way I see it. There are plenty of incidences where the police have been 100% wrong. And those people need to be dealt with based on the facts. Mm-hmm. But you cannot ignore the facts when it doesn't fit your narrative. And Michael Brown, to me in particular, is one of those. Tamir Rice, in particular, is one of those. And one of the most disturbing facts about Tamir Rice, not once did I ever hear his mother at least wonder, why is my 12-year-old kid out here walking around with a gun pointed at people? What did I do wrong that my 12-year-old son, he should know better. Yeah, like my mom, she found he should know better. At 12 years old to be doing that. Like I had a Uzi, like plastic BB gun with the orange tip, and my mom, I think I was like 16 when I had it. She found it. She just fucking took a hammer and broke it. You know, it's like, oh, you're not gonna have that. Like all the kids in our family, my sisters, everybody, my brother-in-laws, we have never purchased toy guns for any of the male children in our family ever, ever, because it's like I know guns exist and they're part of our culture, but I don't want the young kids in my family growing up thinking that this is something that should be glorified. I have guns. I've got several guns. When my boys are old enough to understand what they are, I'll show them to them. I'll take them out and show them how to use them, but they're not a toy. They're not something you play around with in that sense. And at 12 years old, Tamir Rice should have known better than to do what he was doing. He should have known better. And if he didn't, that's on his mama. That's on her. It's not once did she ever make any statements about, I tried to teach him better, I tried to do this.
I have no idea where this gun came from. You never heard any of that from her. She wants to put the blame squarely on the police officer. I just thought it was wrong. Like I said, it's a tragedy. And I guarantee you, that dude's probably never slept. If he has a heart, he is still suffering from that boy's death. If he has a heart. Because if that were me, I would be devastated if I fired a shot and thinking that that was real and turned out that it was a toy. Regardless of what I thought I was justified in doing, the fact that I killed a 12-year-old kid I would have had I don't know how I would have handled it. It has to be, if you have a heart, it had to be hard to deal with. But on the same hand, how was he to know? Mm-hmm. Even if he is 12-year-old can kill you too.
Yeah, gun, you know.
And it didn't have, and the fact is, if you come up on a guy and he's armed, we had a situation here in Akron that was very similar. Mm-hmm. And this guy got shot a lot of times because there were two police officers and they both fired numerous shots. He had been drinking, had a party, exchanged gunshots with a guest that had been thrown out of his party. Someone called the police. The police show up. They see this dude walking down the street, and they see the gun in his waistband. And they call out, drop the gun. I think that the orders were, get on your knees. Put your hands up and get on your knees. And instead of doing that, he did this. They lit him up. Same situation with Tamir Rice. Exact same. He reached for the gun, they shot him. You can't blame them for that. I'm like, come on. And the truth of it is, in my mind, I'm pretty sure, I don't know for a fact because I'm not that dead guy, I don't think he had any intent on shooting the police officer. I really, really don't. But the police officer, how was he to know that? I think the guy was going to pull the gun out and say, hey, here's my gun. Dude was shooting at me, but that's not the order they gave him. They said, put your hands up and get on your knees. If he'd have done that, he'd be alive today. But because he was intoxicated, he reached for the gun.
See, guns and alcohol.
And it killed him. And like I said, that's why I'm against carrying concealed permits. Because shit like that happens. And if he didn't have that gun, he would be alive today. And I tell you people, looking, I know this why? Because he was with his son. He was with his son was either like 18 or a young adult. They were together. The son didn't get shot. When the police said, get on your knees, get your hands up, the son got on his knees and put his hands up. The dad reached for the gun. They were standing next to each other. Son never got harmed. So that's how I know they weren't just blindly shooting. They shot the guy that was the threat. They didn't fire a shot at his son. Wasn't hit. And they were standing next to each other. So that's how I know, in that sense, the only reason he got shot was because he reached for that gun. They didn't shoot his son. Just him. He was the threat.
And moving on to the next question, what are your thoughts on stop and frisk? Where you can basically just walk up to somebody and
Can't do it.
Can't do it?
No. You got to have reasonable cause. Just that is a basic right of every human to be able to walk down the street unaccosted. If you have probable cause to think that the guy might have something, you still just can't, hey, come over here, pat you down. If the dude don't want to be patted down, you can't. You can't just stop people like they were doing in New York a few years ago. You can't just stop a person because you think they might have a gun. You have to be able to articulate probable cause. If you can't, you got nothing.
People like Giuliani, he said that.
Giuliani is like a little crazed dog. He is. He acts like a little crazed dog, like a little lap dog for Donald Trump, and he's a creepy dude. He's just a creepy. He is a creepy guy, and acts like he's so moralistic. Right before 9/11, they were ready to throw his butt out of office for having his mistress live in his house. Scumbag.
And then he's like, where was Hillary during 9/11?
And then not only that,
right next to you.
But then not only that, everybody kept talking about how great Giuliani was during 9/11. He was this great leader. What the hell else was he supposed to do? You're the mayor of New York. They just flew these planes into the building. What are you going to do? Leave and go to Jersey for the weekend? What else is... He didn't do anything superlative. He didn't... You could have did what... I could have done what Rudy Giuliani did. He was there. He was there. He didn't pull any bodies out of the rubble. Name me one thing Rudy did that was superlative during 9/11. Just one. You're the mayor of the city. What else were you supposed to be doing? So don't tell me how great he was at 9/11.
And then he said, like, before President Obama, there was no major attack in the U.S. And now it's like the fact.
9/11?
No, I mean, before the President Obama was elected, there was no like major terrorist attack or whatever. And it's like he's like, dude, you're mayor of New York City during 9/11, and he's like telling the like he was on, I think he's like at the RNC, and he said there or something where he's like, oh yeah, there was no major attack in the U.S. before Obama was in office. It was like, dude, you're mayor of New York during 9/11. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, just like, well, it's almost like Jeb Bush saying that his brother kept them safe. He kept us safe. Hello? Did you forget? Oh yeah, after 9/11 he kept us safe.
He keeps us as safe as Mike Vick keeps his dog safe, you know?
Rudy Giuliani's a little troll.
Yeah. What about, what are your thoughts on the NSA spying in our country?
I love it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow, but when you're in charge of keeping a whole nation safe, you have to know a lot of shit. A lot of shit people don't know, don't want to know, but it's a very tough needle to thread, because you've got to have, in order to do this in a way that it doesn't infringe upon our basic rights, you have to have people that are above reproach, people who are honorable people, certainly not someone like Donald Trump, but someone, I mean, because there's too much at stake not to have to, like I said before, I'm not worried about people.
Do you think there should be probable cause before they spy on citizens or whatever? Or?
You should, yes. You should have to be able to articulate
why you're spying on this
exactly.
Because like when you say
you can't just do it for no reason.
Because when you say like you love the NSA spying, a lot of people they'll probably think that, oh, you know, without a warrant or without any kind of like probable cause.
Yeah, you should have. It would be mandated that you have to have some probable. You can't just go on a fishing expedition. No, I don't think that's fair. But spying on people who live here. Well, I mean, I would rather our government do that than us to be surprised by some crap like 9/11. Know what's going on, but you know, 'cause like I said, if I'm not breaking the law about who I call or what websites I visit, if I'm not breaking the law, I don't care if people know what I look at. I don't care. I'm not breaking the law. So why am I concerned about it? I'm not doing anything illegal. I don't understand everybody's urgency about, because like I said too, everything we do, you give up your social security number, you have to let people know about family members. We give up a lot of information to sources in the government on a daily basis. So I don't get why people are getting so jacked out of shape if they're not doing anything illegal.
See, like my personal take is like, you know, you can be able to spy on people, but you have to have probable cause and a reason. You can't just like, but the reason people are against the NSA spying is because they're doing it without probable cause.
Let me check the clock.
All right.
Because I got to make sure that I'm not getting too, it's 1 after 2.
1 after 2? All right, and I only got like 2 more questions. And
okay.
This one is, if you could meet any person living or dead, who would it be?
Barack Obama.
Really?
Yes. Fascinating man.
Okay.
Fascinating man.
And to just end it with like a silly question, do police officers like donuts, or is that just a myth?
No more than anybody else.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, if someone doesn't like donuts, and they're probably a suspect anyways.
Because I've been retired for 6 years, and last week during Christmas break, the boys and I went to Krispy Kreme and bought 6 donuts. That's the first donut I've eaten in 6 years.
Wow.
I haven't eaten a donut. That was the first time I ate a donut since I retired. And when I did, I would maybe eat a donut maybe once a month.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not a real big sweets guy, I guess. Yeah. But I go to the donut shop to get coffee, but people just see you pulling out a donut shop. So that cup of coffee came with a dozen donuts, as far as they're concerned. But no.
All right, well, I really appreciate this interview.
Absolutely.
Thank you. This
Anytime.
is my Uncle Art. Aren't you writing a book or something?
Yeah, and it's whew, right. Trying to write a book is tough.
You don't have a name for it yet?
No, not yet. Not yet, and I'm just still plugging away.
Okay, well, maybe I'll interview you about that later in the future.
Okay.
So thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe, like, comment. Have a nice day. Peace.
Thank you. And